All right, guys, let's make a two-player game. From the very get-go, this was supposed to be a game that it can be played at the same computer keyboard by two players, and we're going to have split screen to allow us to to have both players play on the same screen. So, in order to do that, we are going to need two characters. That is going to be pretty easy to handle because we already have a player made and we could just duplicate him. I'm going to do that. I'm going to right-click and duplicate my first player. So, I've got one called player and I've got one called player one, and that's not quite what we want. First of all, I'm gonna just move. I'm gonna come over here to, since I've got the duplicate player selected, I'm just gonna grab like the X value here and slide him off to the side. Okay, now there's two, right? You can see them. The original one, I'm gonna rename him player one, not in parentheses like this duplicate, but I'm going to rename him. I'm just going to put a space one on the end of that. And then player in parentheses one, that's the duplicate. I'm going to name him player two. Now I can tell what's what. Now we don't want them to look exactly the same. At least I don't think we do. So what we can do here is just add some new colors to player two so that he looks different. So I'm going to pop open my materials folder down here. And I think I'm going to, let's do this. I'm going to give him a black hat. How's that? Black hat. There's one of the cylinders. Another cylinder. I'm going to zoom in on him a little bit. Black hat. There we go. Okay, so that differentiates them a little bit. Let's make like an ugly lime green color. Let's create another, create a material. And we'll call it green. Get something like a little darker. I don't know, let's add it to him and see. Add it to him. For some reason, I want that a little darker, something like that. Okay, that looks all right. The pink nose. I don't really like the pink nose. I'm not sure what to do about it. I'm gonna leave it for now, though. Let's just create a material, and we'll call it nose. And I'm just gonna add it to the guy's nose. Open the color picker on my nose material, and just kind of, red is not too bad. Just kind of swing it around until we see what we like. That's ugly. A blue nose? That seems okay. I'm going to leave that. It's probably horrible, and all you art people out there are going to be upset with me for that. But okay, so now we have pretty distinct characters, right? Black hat with green and a blue nose, and okay, so they're distinct. I'm happy. Okay. So we've named the player two. Let's have a look at what's going on in our game tab right now. So what you want to notice is that if we pop open our player one and player one as one of the child objects had a main camera. Now, player two, when we made a duplicate, all of the child objects, including the main camera, got duplicated. So now we have two cameras. One of them is where the where player one is standing, pointed where he's looking, and the other one is where player two is, pointed where he's looking. But only one of the cameras is showing over here. That's because one of the cameras is showing onto the screen, and then the other camera is showing onto the screen, overwriting the image that the first camera is showing. So you're only going to get one of the two cameras. Let's guess at which one it is. I think it's probably the second camera because the main camera is going to get drawn first, and then it's going to move down the list, and the main camera down here is going to happen second. Now, here's a quick and easy way to find out what's really happening, which one of them is actually showing here. I'm going to grab player one. I'm just going to rotate him a little bit. Rotate, rotate, rotate. And nothing is happening. The camera, the vision, the view that we have right here is not rotating. So if we go to player two and we rotate him, now the camera rotates with the player. So the first camera higher up on the list goes first and shows onto the screen, except that it doesn't get shown because it gets hijacked by the second thing that throws in, right? It's like if you come in and you paint, if you paint a wall red, right? And somebody comes in after you and paints it green, what color is it? Well, it's green. The second one is the one that's real. Not the first one gets covered up. So that's what's happening is it's moving down the hierarchy list, and the second camera is what's happening. Now, we want to see both. We want split screen. So here's how we actually handle that. I think player 1 should be on the top and player 2 should be on the bottom. That seems to make the most sense to me. So I'm going to go to main camera here, and I'm going to look in the inspector at its camera component, the thing that actually is going to give us a picture here. And the main thing that we're going to do now is we're going to mess with the viewport rect. That's rectangle. The viewport rectangle. Right now, the rectangle is showing us the entire game. Like we've got this aspect ratio, we've got the canvas size, all this stuff. The 16:9 like HD TV display thing is what it's showing us. And right now, it's showing us the height is 1. That's the entire thing. How tall is it? 1 whole screen. How wide is it? 1 whole screen. Where does the screen start on the width? It starts at 0 and goes all the way across. Where does it start on Y? It starts at the bottom at 0 and goes all the way up. Now we want our camera to not take up the entire screen. Our first camera, you know what? Let's manipulate the second camera first because that's the one that we're actually seeing right here. So our main camera on player 2, we want it to be only half the height. So H is going to not be 1, it's going to be 0.5. Notice how it's only showing us half of that. And it's not covering up the top half of the other camera now. So we're seeing the top half of the other camera, and it's shortened the first camera, or the player 2 camera, so it's living in the bottom half of the screen here. Good. Now what we need to do is make the camera from player 1 not right to the entire height like it is right now, and only to be half of it covered up by camera 2. We need it to also be, we need it to also be half the height. So we're going to have it be 0.5. Now it's exactly behind camera 2 again. The difference why this is going to work is because we don't want it to start at Y is 0. We don't want it to start at the beginning, the bottom of the screen. We want it to start halfway up. Well, halfway up is 0.5. So on Y, for player 1, we're going to say 0.5, and that's going to put our player 1 camera at the top. So player 1, this is his view. Player 2, this is his view. And you could get wild. You could have tons of cameras and have them all display to different parts of this. And that actually would work over here. You just have to manipulate where you want things. For example, if I wanted a 4x4, sort of an old Nintendo 64 GoldenEye kind of a look, then I could actually have this camera be only half as wide, 0.5, right? And I could add another one that was this exact same thing, except that it starts halfway across on the X, so 0.5, right? Now, obviously, we don't want 4 players on this. That would be too many people crowded around a single keyboard. But you get the concept here. So I'm going to reset that. That's going to be back to start at 0, and it's going to be full width. Okay, our cameras are set. Now, let's go back to our scene view. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just rotate the players. Let's just collapse them. I don't need all the child objects. So I'm going to take player 1 and I'm going to rotate him on the Y-axis so that he's looking at, that looks like he's looking at the other character, right? And I'm going to take player 2 and rotate him on the Y-axis so that he's kind of looking at our player 1 character. Okay. Now let's go back to the game tab, and there are no players. Now, if we look in the scene view, the purple guy, player number 1, he should see the green guy and the building. And if we look there, he can see the building, but there's no green guy. Anybody have an idea why that's happening? That's because of the main camera and the layers and this culling mask. Remember, we had taken player 1, put him in a special layer so he's not in the same layer as everybody else, and then we told the camera to not look at that layer. So When we duplicated that player and we have player 2 now, again, player 2 is still on the player layer and the camera is not seeing anything that's on the player layer. Main camera on player 2 still doesn't see the player. That's not checked. So the way that we're going to fix this is we're going to make another layer that's going to be for player 2. So I'm going to go up to my layers and I'm going to add a layer. Layer number 9 is not going to be called player anymore. It's going to be called player 1. It's still going to be layer 9. We don't have to go and reselect anything. Layer 10 is going to be called player 2. Okay. So that's, now there are separate layers for that. So let's go to our player 2 in the hierarchy and change its layer to player 2. Yes, change the child objects. All the eyes, nose, foot, hat, camera, everything. Okay, now it's changed. So player 2 is now part of layer 2. And we want to change its camera so that the culling mask is showing player 1. Now he can see the purple guy, right? We don't want to see player 2 because that's the layer that we're that we are, right? So in player 2, camera should see player 1 and everything seems right. We don't want to see ourselves. If we go up to the main camera for player 1 and look at its culling mask, it's still not seeing player 2 yet because it's a new layer and we haven't told it we want to see it. So let's check that, and there's our green dude. Now everybody can see everything. Neither player can see its own eyeballs in front of the camera, and they can see the other player. So that's exactly what we want. Okay, so we've got players. Let's have a look. So we got, I'm going to hit play. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to hit forward. I'm going to hit backward. Let's do this. I'm going to turn. Notice both cameras are turning when I hit turn. They're both characters are turning. When I back up, if I'm, look at the feet of the green character here. He's backing up. Obviously, the camera that is showing this picture is going forward and backward, but you can see the other guy is moving too. That's because we're using the exact same movement script, right? Player 1 has this player motion script, and player 2 has the exact same player motion script with the exact same speed, the exact same everything. Not only that, since it's the exact same script, the script that's attached to both of them are both looking for a W key press. That's over here in my motion. This script is attached to both of them. So player 1 is looking to see if I press W, and player 2 is also looking to see if I press W because he's being driven by another copy of this exact same code. So what we need to do is, if we're going to have separate controls for these guys and have one set of controls not actually move both players, because that's super weird, there's a couple different ways that we could do this. One is that we could reference the layer, right? Player 1 is in layer 1. So we could actually go to our scripts, and just the same as in our player stats, we could say, okay, if you press a key, and then instead of checking to see if strength, stamina, mana is bigger than 1, we could say, and if your player is in this layer, is in player layer 9 or layer 10, then do this, right? That's a little bit complicated. Honestly, the easiest thing that we could do is just duplicate the player motion script. So I'm going to do that. There's complications with this as well, but I don't know, it feels easier to me to do it this way. So I'm just going to right click on that. And what you'll notice is that it doesn't give you in this list a way to duplicate it. You can delete it, you can rename it, you can do all this stuff, but you cannot duplicate the thing. A little bit weird. Maybe they've changed that in a newer piece of Unity. So instead, I'm going to go up to the top here to my edit menu, and it does have a duplicate function right here. Not only that, it tells you what the key command is for this. Command D or Control D if you're on a Windows, right? So I'm not even going to click it from here. I'm going to select it. I'm going to hit Command D, and it's going to duplicate it. So I have a player motion script, and I have a player motion 1 script. That's the duplicate. I also have a nice new error down here that I didn't have before. Anyone know what the error is going to be? That is, it says player motion 1, that's my new script, the duplicate, right, .cs, has an error. The namespace global already contains a definition for player motion. Player motion, what it's talking about is the player motion. It's talking about the class name, right? I have in player motion, my original script here, I have a, the code is named player motion. And now I have a second piece of code. Let's just double click that and get it open in Visual Studio. Player motion 1 does not have the same name as its file name, and that's a big no-no, but it also has the exact same class name as a completely different script, and that is also a no-no. So that's what it's complaining about over here. Yeah, the namespace global already contains a definition for player motion, so you can't have two scripts with the same class name. This one's not going to work anyway since its class name is different from the file name up here. So let's just change the class name to match the file name. And I'm going to save that. That should fix everything because not only does it now have a different, or now it matches the file name, but it also is different from the other class name. So we don't have two player motion classes anymore. And if we go back to Unity, it's already caught up with us, and yeah, it's not complaining about that anymore. Let's hit play real quick just to see. Okay. Both cameras are still turning. Anyone know why? It's because I do have two codes now, but they still are both using W, and the other one is still using W for the exact same thing. So what I need to do is change the keys that control one of them. I don't want the exact same thing done by both scripts. So in for player 2, which is using this player motion 1, maybe I should change the names of that. Maybe I should have a player motion 1 and player motion 2. I'll remember. Up to you to decide if you want to make the names make perfect sense. I do encourage you to change the names right here, but I'm going to make this video quick. So it's not already not quick, but so in the second script, I'm going to have the motion for player 2 be controlled by the arrows. So instead of the W key press, let's have that be up. If you start to type it, it'll guess. Now I capitalized U. I'm going to put lowercase UP. It still is guessing. Do you mean up arrow with capital? Yes, I mean up arrow. Instead of S, we're going to have down arrow. Instead of A, we're going to have left arrow. There we go. And instead of D, we're going to have right arrow. Save it. Back to Unity. Okay, let's see. I'm going to hit play. We have our split screen. Now I'm using WASD. All right, what have I done? Okay. So obvious. You guys probably all guessed this before I remembered to do it. Player 1. There's our player motion script. And player 2. There's our exact same player motion script because we've still got the original number 1 code attached to player 2. We haven't removed that, and we haven't attached the new player 2 version of the code to player 2. So they're still running, both characters are still using the exact same piece of code. So I'm going to go over to the little gear. Let's just pull this in so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to remove the component. There is no motion component now on player 2. And so I'm going to go back to my project. I'm going to grab the second motion script, and I'm just going to add it back in there. Now, if you remember on player 1, we had a speed of 0.1 and a rotation speed of 5. Let's make that exactly the same. 0.1 for player speed and 5 for the rotation speed. Okay, let's spread that back out. Now, let's play it and try. WASD. Yes. The top camera is moving and the bottom camera is not moving, but it shows the player 1 actually moving. Now my arrow keys. Yes. Player 2, up in the top camera, we can see player 2 swinging back and forth. And of course, on the bottom, the camera is moving. So now we actually have completely independently moving characters. All right, guys, I have come back to tack this onto the end of our video because when I originally recorded the video, I forgot to add something, and that is to take our health and mana bars and duplicate them so that both players get to have one. I've already recorded the next couple videos at this point, so you can see the fruit of my labor there. I've already got a fireball in the scripts folder that I created. I've got a fireball script. You'll be doing those in the next couple videos. Right now, let's duplicate these so that we've got some for everybody. So I'm going to go over to the scene view, and let's double click on the canvas to get it in view here. I'm going to click the 2D button up here at the top of my scene view panel, and that takes me perfectly out to the side so that everything is nice and crisp. So when we duplicated the motion, we had this problem where we were going to have two different sets of keys that operate the two different copies of our motion script. In this case, both players are going to have the player stats script attached to them. And since we're not actually inputting any keys to control them, we don't need to duplicate them, because what's going to happen is that the actual script down here, our player stats script, is going to have separate instances of it. It's like the file that we have on our hard drive down here is sort of like a template for it. And it makes a copy of it to stick to player 1. So here it is in player 1, player stats, right? And in player 2, we have a second copy of it. So that is, they don't actually interact. They're not the same one. They're called different instances of the same script. So on player 1, we have an instance of our player stat script, and on player 2, we'll have an instance of our player stat script. So they're actually completely separate. The reason why we needed to have player motion and player motion 1 is because when I press the up arrow key, for example, I don't want both instances of that script to react to that, the one on player 1 and on player 2, because they're both looking for that. So I split it into two different sets of code and had them react to different keys. So we don't actually have to worry about a second script or duplicating this or anything like that. So all we need to do is have a second set of bars for us to look at. So I'm going to open up the canvas, and I've got a health bar here. I'm just going to duplicate that. And I've got a mana bar, and I'm going to duplicate that. And real quick, I'm going to rename these. So my health bar, let's name that health bar P2 for player 2, and mana bar P2. Okay, so I've got, these are exactly this red bar right here. There's actually two of them there. One is stacked right on top of the first one, and so you can't even tell because one's in front of the other. Same thing with the blue. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be very careful. I'm gonna click my move tool up here. You can click on it here, or you can just hit W on the keyboard to grab that tool. And I'm just gonna click on health bar, and I'm very carefully gonna zoom out so that I can see just the vertical arrow here. I could grab it and move it with this little square here, but I want to keep it perfectly in line, so I'm just gonna move it down like that. And now I'm going to select from hierarchy mana bar number 2. I'm being very careful not to just click on it over here because I'm not sure if I'm going to end up selecting the original mana bar or the mana bar for player 2. So I'm going to select it from the hierarchy menu just to make sure I'm moving the correct one. And so I'm going to move those down there, and that looks about right. Now, let's just look in the game tab. Do we like how these are placed? It'll do for now. I think perhaps, yeah, that's plenty good enough. Now, in player 2, notice that since player 2 is just a copy of player 1 and we haven't actually messed with what the values are here in its player stats script variable fields, he still has references to the original mana bar and health bar. Well, we don't want that. We want the new ones. So that's easy enough. I'm just going to grab the new health bar here and put it in. So now it's health bar P2 and mana bar P2 will go down here. And now we have 2 sets of health and mana bars, and we have references to the correct ones. Guys, I think we're ready to go. We got ourselves a 2-player game, and we are ready to start fighting. So, in the next video, let's make a fireball.